Welcome to our deep dive into why 10 countries might want to see America falter in 2025. From geopolitical rivalries to economic struggles, nations like China, Russia, and Iran face ongoing tensions with the United States. Historical conflicts, military standoffs, and trade disputes shape their complex relationships. In this video, we'll explore the unique motivations of each country, be it regional dominance, resource control, or resistance to American influence. Join us as we unpack these dynamics, shedding light on the global forces at play as of April 2025, without picking sides or passing judgment. 10. Belarus. Belarus's animosity toward America reflects its alignment with Russia and rejection of Western influence by 2025. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on President Alexander Lukashenko's government, accusing it of election fraud and human rights violations, particularly after the contested 2020 vote. America supports Belarusian opposition figures and civil society, which Minsk views as meddling in its affairs. Economically, U.S. penalties target key industries like potash and oil, straining Belarus's finances. Geopolitically, Belarus serves as a buffer between Russia and NATO, hosting Russian troops and relying on Moscow for support against Western pressure. The U.S. backs Ukraine and Poland, Belarus's neighbors, heightening tensions. If America weakened in 2025, Belarus could see reduced sanctions, stabilizing its economy and trade with Europe. A decline in U.S. influence might weaken opposition movements, allowing Lukashenko to tighten control. Militarily, a faltering NATO, led by America, could ease threats on Belarus's western border, strengthening its partnership with Russia. Diplomatically, diminished American clout could limit criticism at forums like the UN, giving Belarus room to resist democratization efforts. This might solidify its role as a Russian ally, pursuing its interests with less fear of U.S. driven isolation or regime change initiatives. 9. Turkey. Turkey, a NATO ally, has increasingly diverged from America by 2025 over regional and security issues. The U.S. supports Kurdish forces in Syria, which Turkey labels as terrorists linked to the PKK, a domestic insurgent group. This has fueled military clashes and diplomatic spats. Turkey's purchase of Russian S-400 systems prompted U.S. sanctions and its removal from the F-35 program, straining NATO ties. Ankara seeks to assert itself as a regional power in the Middle East and Mediterranean, often clashing with U.S. backing of Greece and Cyprus over energy disputes. Turkey also aims to influence the Caucasus and Central Asia, where American policies sometimes counter its ambitions. If America faltered in 2025, Turkey could gain flexibility within NATO, facing less pressure to align with Western priorities. Reduced U.S. influence might weaken support for Kurdish groups, allowing Turkey to secure its borders. Economically, a decline in American clout could ease sanctions, boosting Turkey's defense industry and trade. Geopolitically, Turkey could expand its role in Syria, Libya, and beyond, leveraging ties with Russia and Qatar. This might reposition Turkey as a bridge between East and West, pursuing its interests with less American oversight or interference. 8. Pakistan. Pakistan's relationship with America has oscillated between alliance and friction since the Cold War. By 2025, tensions stem from U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan's tribal regions, which Islamabad says violate sovereignty, and America's growing partnership with India, Pakistan's longtime rival. During the Afghan War, the U.S. relied on Pakistan for logistics but criticized its alleged support for Taliban factions. America's pressure to crack down on militancy has strained ties, as Pakistan balances domestic security with strategic interests. The U.S.-India axis, including arms deals and joint exercises, alarms Pakistan, which seeks parity in South Asia. Pakistan also aims to influence post-war Afghanistan, where U.S. policies often diverge. If America weakened in 2025, Pakistan could face less scrutiny over its military and nuclear programs, enhancing its regional stance. Reduced U.S. support for India might shift the balance, allowing Pakistan to bolster defenses along its eastern border. In Afghanistan, a declining America could cede influence to Pakistan and China, aligning with Islamabad's goals. Economically, eased American pressure might open trade opportunities, reducing reliance on U.S. aid. This could empower Pakistan to pursue its interests with greater autonomy, free from the constraints of American strategic priorities. 7. Syria. Syria's conflict with America intensified during its civil war, which began in 2011 and continues to shape relations in 2025. The U.S. has supported rebel groups against President Bashar al-Assad, whom it accuses of war crimes, while maintaining a military presence in eastern Syria to combat ISIS and secure oil fields. America's sanctions target Syria's economy, hindering reconstruction efforts. Assad, backed by Russia and Iran, seeks to reclaim full territorial control, a goal complicated by U.S.-backed Kurdish forces in the northeast. The U.S. also opposes Syria's alliances with Iran and Hezbollah, viewing them as threats to Israel and regional stability. Syria aims to rebuild its infrastructure and assert sovereignty, both obstructed by American policies. If America declined in 2025, Syria could face less military interference, allowing Assad to retake contested areas. Reduced U.S. influence might weaken sanctions, enabling trade with Arab states and reconstruction with Russian and Chinese aid. Diplomatically, a faltering America could shift dynamics at the UN, where the U.S. often blocks pro-Syria resolutions. This might strengthen Syria's position in the Middle East, letting it deepen ties with allies and resist Western efforts to isolate or overthrow its government. 6. Venezuela. Venezuela's tensions with America escalated under Hugo Chavez and persist into 2025 under Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry, its economic lifeline, accusing the government of corruption and human rights abuses. These measures have deepened a crisis marked by hyperinflation and mass migration. America recognizes opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president, undermining Maduro's legitimacy. Washington also accuses Venezuela of narco-trafficking and ties to groups like Colombia's FARC, prompting further penalties. Venezuela aligns with Russia, China, and Iran, relying on their support to bypass U.S. restrictions. It seeks to maintain control of its vast oil reserves and influence in Latin America, goals thwarted by American pressure. If America faltered in 2025, Venezuela could see sanctions ease, reviving oil exports and stabilizing its economy. Reduced U.S. backing for the opposition might weaken Guaido's movement, allowing Maduro to consolidate power. Geopolitically, a weakened America could diminish its ability to isolate Venezuela, enabling stronger ties with allies like Russia, which provides military aid. This could shift regional dynamics, giving Venezuela leverage to negotiate with neighbors and resist American efforts to promote regime change, reinforcing its position in a multipolar world. 5. Cuba. Cuba's rift with America began with the 1959 revolution, when Fidel Castro ousted a U.S.-friendly regime. The subsequent U.S. trade embargo, still in place by 2025, has isolated Cuba economically for over 6 decades, restricting access to markets, investment, and goods. America has historically supported dissidents and imposed sanctions to pressure Cuba's government, which portrays the U.S. as an imperialist threat to its sovereignty. The embargo exacerbates shortages of food, medicine, and energy, fueling Havana's narrative of resistance. Cuba seeks to maintain its political system and expand ties with nations like Russia and China, often hindered by U.S. influence in international forums. Recent American policies, including tightened travel restrictions, have deepened economic woes. If America weakened in 2025, Cuba could see relief from sanctions, opening trade with Latin America and beyond. Reduced U.S. diplomatic clout might limit support for opposition groups, allowing the government to stabilize domestically. Geopolitically, a declining America could weaken its ability to enforce the embargo, giving Cuba breathing room to modernize its economy and infrastructure. This might also embolden Cuba to assert greater influence in the Caribbean, leveraging partnerships with anti-U.S. states to counter historical American dominance in the region. 4. North Korea. North Korea's hostility toward America stems from the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, and has persisted into 2025. The U.S. maintains a significant military presence in South Korea, conducts joint exercises, and stations missile defense systems, all of which Pyongyang views as preparations for invasion. America leads international sanctions targeting North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, isolating it economically and diplomatically. These restrictions limit trade, access to technology, and foreign currency, exacerbating domestic hardships. Kim Jong-un's regime relies on anti-American propaganda to unify its population and justify its militarized state. North Korea seeks to reunify the peninsula under its control, a goal opposed by the U.S.-South Korea alliance. It also aims to expand its arsenal, testing missiles capable of reaching American soil. If America declined in 2025, North Korea could face reduced military pressure, allowing it to accelerate weapons development without fear of preemptive strikes. Economically, weakened U.S. influence might loosen sanctions, enabling trade with China or Russia. Diplomatically, a faltering America could shift negotiations, giving North Korea leverage to demand concessions like troop withdrawals or aid. This could strengthen Kim's grip on power and elevate North Korea's status in East Asia, free from American containment efforts. Iran's adversarial stance toward America dates back to the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when the U.S.-backed Shah was overthrown. Relations deteriorated further with the U.S. hostage crisis and have remained tense ever since. America's sanctions, intensified after its 2018 withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, target Iran's oil exports and banking sector, crippling its economy. The U.S. supports Israel, Iran's archrival, and has conducted military operations against Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria. Iran, meanwhile, backs groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis, clashing with American interests in Lebanon and Yemen. Tehran's nuclear program remains a flashpoint, with America leading efforts to prevent Iran from developing weapons, while Iran insists it seeks peaceful energy. Regionally, Iran aims to dominate the Middle East, a goal obstructed by U.S. alliances with Saudi Arabia and Gulf states. If America weakened in 2025, Iran could face fewer economic constraints, allowing it to rebuild its infrastructure and military. Reduced U.S. military presence might enable Iran to expand influence in Iraq, Syria, and beyond, unchecked by American airstrikes or naval patrols. Diplomatically, a faltering U.S. could weaken international pressure on Iran's nuclear ambitions, giving Tehran leverage to negotiate with Europe or Russia on its terms. This could solidify Iran's position as a regional power, free from American containment. 2. Russia. Russia's relationship with America has been marked by decades of rivalry, originating in the Cold War and persisting into 2025. The U.S. has imposed stringent sanctions on Russia following its annexation of Crimea in 2014, its role in the Ukraine conflict, and interventions in Syria, severely impacting Russia's economy. These measures target key sectors like energy and finance, limiting Moscow's ability to fund its ambitions. America's support for NATO's eastward expansion, placing military assets near Russia's borders, is seen as a direct threat to national security. Russia seeks to reassert influence over former Soviet states, such as Ukraine and Georgia, where U.S. backing of pro-Western governments complicates its plans. In the Middle East, Russia's alliance with Syria clashes with American interests, particularly over energy pipelines and regional dominance. The U.S. also accuses Russia of election interference and cyber attacks, further souring ties. A weakened America in 2025 could lead to a fractured NATO, easing military pressure on Russia's western flank. Economically, it might reduce sanctions, allowing Russia to bolster its oil and gas exports, critical to its budget. Politically, a diminished U.S. could embolden Russia to expand its footprint in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Arctic, where it competes with America for resources. With less American opposition, Russia could strengthen ties with China and other powers, shifting the global balance in its favor. 1. China. China's emergence as a global superpower has positioned it as a direct competitor to America across multiple domains. Economically, the two nations vie for dominance in trade, technology, and manufacturing. America has imposed tariffs on Chinese goods and restricted companies like Huawei, citing security concerns, which Beijing perceives as attempts to stifle its growth. The U.S. also challenges China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project aimed at expanding Chinese influence across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Geopolitically, tensions simmer in the South China Sea, where China asserts territorial claims opposed by America and its allies. The Taiwan issue further complicates relations, with America providing military support to Taipei, which China considers part of its sovereign territory. Militarily, both nations engage in a quiet arms race, with America maintaining a network of bases in the Indo-Pacific that China views as encirclement. Culturally and ideologically, China's system of governance contrasts sharply with America's, and a decline in U.S. power could allow Beijing to promote its model globally without resistance. If America faltered in 2025, China could accelerate its rise, reshape international trade rules in its favor, secure critical resources, and face less pushback on human rights or domestic policies. Reduced American influence might also weaken alliances like the Quad, U.S., Japan, India, Australia, giving China freer rein to pursue its strategic objectives and establish itself as the preeminent global leader.